4chan archived. Horror of Noon. Chapter 1. Part 4. The accounts continued. Once in my life I felt that. In short, I was 16 then. I lived with my parents and constantly smoked. Somehow, all my relatives went to our quarters because of the New Year holidays, while I stayed at home. The house and the computer were at my disposal all that January. The year was 2005. I go out onto the balcony with a cigarette in my mouth, overflowing with the anticipation of a great vacation and a feeling of complete freedom. But while I was striking a lighter, the buzzing of the world disappeared. Imagine such a picture. Clear sky, sparkling snow, bright sun, and just a deafening creak of a lighter in absolute silence. Of course, it was the holidays. Everyone went wherever. But even the birds would not tweet. And if you take into account that my outskirts were just under the window, then the prolonged silence of more than 10 seconds was something abnormal. No human voices, no wind. Quiet as the grave. Together with the silence, the radiance of fresh snow under the winter sun, in contrast with the blue sky, seems somehow unnatural. Ridiculously bright scenery instead of the real world. Were it all at night, it would not be half as scary, because such quietness is natural for the night. Then, I vividly imagined that not only the surroundings had turned into decorations, but all the people in their apartments are now frozen in dynamic poses. And for some reason, I did not freeze, and thereby made a terrible mistake, because they are about to begin in the silence. There are deaf footsteps of something huge in the distance. Then, a figure as tall as a couple skyscrapers will begin to emerge from the blueness of the fake sky. And the steps will slowly and gradually begin to grow louder, louder. And in this silence, everything will be heard perfectly. Well, then someone did slam the car door under my balcony, and the illusion collapsed. I quite easily threw all of these unpleasant sensations out of my head. Continuing, I'm not afraid to go out on such days, and I don't pull the curtains. But every time, on the sunny days of winter, I sometimes feel something like that. And at such moments, I quickly translate thoughts into something abstract, so that those feelings would not be repeated. Sometimes, I scroll through this memory at night. It's not so scary. Now I have, by the way, grey sky and rain outside the window. Otherwise, I would have started to pull the described impressions out. What is the horror of noon? Some people here ask. It is a bright sunny day. You are walking around the city. Green trees, trams ring, the bright burning sun, and almost no people. Not even a lot of cars. Then, suddenly, all the songs seem to die, replaced by an almost ringing silence. You look around and understand that this should not be, that it cannot be. You feel something terrible is coming. You feel like Sarah Connor in the playground, a second before a nuclear explosion. And then suddenly all the sounds come back and this feeling goes away. I remember one of those days. Too bright, poisonous sun. At home, and suddenly this feeling. Silence. Unnatural silence. Further events unfold in seconds. A motorcycle enters the courtyard. Some kind of drunk aunt throws a bag in the face of the driver. He loses control and, together with the passenger, crashes into a wall at high speed. Howl. Screams. It is on such a sunny day that the screams are especially audible, as if everything around is the scenery for this drama. I am a little boy. I went to the other end of the city to buy some kind of trinket. Sunny day. What an unnatural summer day. Too much sun. Unnatural silence in the air. I'm running back home and suddenly I see what seems to me a familiar house and shop. I think maybe I should somehow cut the road. Although I seem to understand with my mind that I shouldn't be near this house without speed or transport. But I cannot help myself. I rush to this house. Continued. There is dead silence and the sun. I wander into the yards and understand that this is not the house that I first saw. Then I run further in that direction. For some reason, it seems to me that this is how I will find my way out. Instead, I find myself on some sort of railroad. I run on the rails. A worker sits there, and he just silently looks at me. He says nothing and does not even blink, as if frozen. I run past. The sun is blinding. I see an old poster. Glory to some Congress of the CPSU Central Committee. And suddenly I feel horror. I stop. And at that moment, in the silence, I hear a scream. Boy, stop! Running workers in orange robes. A wire near the track disconnected. If I ran further, I would be dead. This is why I feel the horror of the day. There is a small story. I was in Britain, in the small town of Bournemouth. Once in the afternoon, I walked along winding streets, each with rows of houses and small courtyards, with fences, stone walls and hedges. In short, pixelated. The weather is hot. There is not a soul around, at all. Nobody goes on the roads. Only bees and bumblebees rush between the flower beds. And then a melody starts to play from somewhere, like an ice cream van from a movie, and it drilled in your brain. You know it, but you can't remember where it came from. It was creepy, but not too much. I went to the sound, but in general it was difficult to understand where it came from. As if this damned ice cream van walks around you in circles. I walked for about 20 minutes. The music subsided, then returned. But even when I spat and went home, I could still hear it. It only stopped when the owners returned. I lived with an elderly couple. I asked them about an ice cream van and the music, but they did not know anything. Then, all evening on the internet, I was looking for the melody, but I could not find it. In general, in that town, if you could get away from the coast, where there are shops and a crowd of students/beach people, there was always such a deserted atmosphere. So you would expect to see Dumbledore in a pointed hat, and he would steal the battery charge from your phone. And none of the neighbors behind the hedges would even know. Does anyone even live in these houses? Pick not related. As a child, I had the same dream many times in a row. The essence of the dream, I ended up in the near future, in my small, poor town. I went to my apartment, but strangers lived there and said that my relatives have been long dead. After that, I wander around and think, what should I do next? Atmosphere, noon, unnaturally bright sun, many flowers around, and old houses painted in white. No people around, complete hopelessness. I will remember this atmosphere forever. When I was a small kid, in the summer, we went to my family's cottage. There, I always had moments when I was very uneasy. Given that there is generally quite deserted, it is a small village and almost always sunny in the warm seasons. This adds to the atmosphere. There was always a time, usually afternoon, at around 2 or 3 o'clock, when the sun was still high, the heat was heavy. Everyone had eaten lunch and, like sleepy flies, spread to their corners. Almost all of my neighbors did this at the same time, so getting someone out to play was impossible. I usually sat in the attic or climbed out onto the garden on a swing, taking in with me a stack of Soviet magazines such as Science and Life, and read. And at that time, there was always a feeling that time became thick and viscous. it seemed to stop. At once, all the trees and all kinds of insects seemed to not be real, but some kind of decorations. And there was a feeling that nothing will ever happen, that your friends are no more, parents, neighbors, even the dog has disappeared somewhere. I always waited for the heat to go and activity would begin again. Mother and grandmother would get out into the garden to dig up their vegetables. Dad would go out for a bear. Friends would get out for a walk or a swim. All this movement started in the late afternoon. Well, in some book about the Soviet children camps, I read the phrase, dead time, in relation to afternoon sleep. And since then, this image has not come out of my head. An endless summer. The geometry, ideal to lifelessness. The eye burning white in the deep hot blue sky. A hellish combination. The fear of noon is an uncanny valley, just in relation to all reality. Artists who painted this, Giorgio de Chirico and Edward Hopper, games that resemble this feeling: Neverhood, Serious Sam, and Pathologic, the original. So, this is it for now. Of course, there are many more stories and theories. I selected only the most vivid ones. Let's see how it goes. Maybe someone here has experienced this, and the conversation will start. And then I will translate more. Or the thread will drown. I'm okay with that too.